The untuning of the sky to figure out how. I'm skipping to page 266 to figure out how one tunes the soul. The tuning of the soul. One theme in particular that is borne along by this current, other rather significantly engages several of the problems with which we have been dealing. We have so far treated the notion of solemn music as the musical setting of public prayer. We have seen that the attitude towards this kind of music are conditioned by overall positions in the ecclesiastical controversies of the late 16th and 17th centuries, but that remains the widespread metaphorical equation of music with private meditation and personal prayer, with which so much poetry of the middle decades of the 17th century in England is concerned. It is this theme which is treated by Puritan and Anglican poets alone, and it remains a portion of humanist musical doctrine that is last to be dislocated from actual belief. In addition, certain particular ethical interpretations of the same lend themselves admirably to the world views of those like the Cambridge Platonists, who felt that the newer notions of the passivity of the soul could account for neither the fact of knowledge nor the possibility of profound utterance. To trace the history briefly of this theme since antiquity is to start with one of the basic propositions of musica humana. The assertion of Plato, commented upon by Sir Thomas Browne in the passage quoted above, that the soul is a harmony. The soul is just harmony. Do you think if it just becomes in the harmony, the soul is nothing but harmony? Actually,
I mean, it is perfection. It's considered maybe.
Actually, while there is in the Republic the famous treatment of the soul as a harmonium, or proportioning of reason, spirit, and sensual appetite, do you think if you just balance these two, proportioning of reason, spirit, and sensual appetite, Republic for...
There is a time that you're gonna reason that. There is a time that you're gonna make your choices.
And in the
timaeus,
you're
not gonna have any appetite for.
What is it? Timaeus.
Things like that.
Timaeus.
Who gets the money?
Timaeus, the elaborate account of the generation of the soul, of the world, given in terms of Pythagorean generation of the constant intervals. There remains Socrates' lengthy, detailed refutation in Phaedro of the assertion that the body stands to the soul as does the lyre to the harmony played upon it. Is this the relationship of the body to the soul is the same as the lyre to the harmony played upon it, and in short, that the soul is itself a harmony. Phaedro. But we have already seen that the musical and more abstractly conceptual uses of the word harmonia are shifted back and forth even among classical writers with considerable fluidity. But what is most interesting for us here will be the way in which the specifically and in a historical sense parochially musical interpretation of harmony as vertical cluster or polyphonic constellation could provide the metaphorical material for certain 17th century poets Hand in hand with this goes the whole notion that what I shall call psychic tonus, specifically musical reinterpretation in a rather different way of the doctrine of the harmony of the soul. For, in this case, the harmony is taken to be more than what ancient writers might have meant by it, a scale or tuning. But since this balance or proportion between the disparate elements of the soul is treated in the ethical notion of temperance, corresponding to the musical notion of being tuned or tempered, do you think a person can be tuned or tempered?
Tuned all the time. The master asks you to be tuned to the head eye.
Should we be tuned up and good temper?
It depends on the tuning that you receive, what you receive.
You mean if you're quiet-minded with you're meditated and the overall overlapping figurative reflection of these ethical and musical concepts by each other can be well understood. Leo Spitzer. Do you hear that book over there, Leo Spitzer, right down below you on the right? Can you pick it up?
Oh, I know it.
No, down on the bottom.
My back is a little stiff.
Leo Spitzer, in displaying the wealth of semantic history that he uncovers in the process of trying to account for the various senses of the German word stimmung. We're supposed to look at this word, stimmung. Most Germans see it as meaning voice, but he sees this as like music of the spheres, devotes several fascinating pages to what he calls the semantic fields of stimmung, the French accord, and the English temper. We're supposed to relate these words together. German stimmung, French accord, and English temper. Temper is like temperament. In the all of them, we find operating the concepts both of musical tuning and an emotional and a spiritual adjustment. Do you feel spiritually adjusted when you meditate? We have already considered a similar situation prevailing in the association of mode and mood in our discussion of music and the affections in the previous chapter. But the particular religious implications of the aspect of musical ethos revealed by music ethos revealed by the notion of temperament are of interest here in that they tend to engage the notions of prayer, meditation, and personal immediate communion with God. How does all this being tuned up and in temperament relate to prayer and meditation and God, to be in communion with God? Is that where you have harmony?
In communion with God, when you meditate, you are totally fully in connection with God. You don't think, you don't. Yes.
We have already examined some of the figurative uses of the stringed instrument during the Renaissance, but the various notions of the soul as an instrument, or the body as the instrument upon which the soul plays, or the soul as the melody, or the chordal fusion of the body strings, have previously come up in a specifically devotional context. Many writers after Plato, play the figure of the self as instrument in one or more of these ways, plotinus, for example, can use it as follows, quote, in the case of a material frame, ill-organized, it may check all such action of the soul upon the material frame as it demands a certain collaboration in the part acted upon. Thus a lyre may be so ill-strung as to be incapable of the melodic exactitude necessary to musical effect. Plotinus himself, like many other later writers, uses the phenomenon of sympathetic vibration to explain the efficacy of prayer. In particular, the prayer is answered by the mere fact that part or other part are wrought to one tune, like a musical string which, plucked at one end, vibrates at the other also. So if you can tune up your instrument, often too the sounding of one string awakens that what might pass for a perception in another, the result of their being in harmony and tuned to one musical scale. Now, if the vibration of a lyre affects another by virtue of the sympathy existing between them, then certainly in the all, even though it is constituted in contraries, there must be one melodic system, where it contains its unisons as well, and an entire context, even in those contraries, is a kinship. We're looking at music theory of the music of the spheres. Well, what else is it? This theory of world harmony. The image of the self as stringed instrument is put to slightly different use in the same general circumstances by philo. These are all the experts. Quote, service pleasing to God and to virtue is like an intense and severe harmony. Itonan ke strophadam harmonium, and in no soul is there an instrument, organon, capable of sustaining it without such frequent relaxation and unstringing of the chords should be strings that it descends from the higher forms of art to the lower. Here we may also see the ethnomusical ideas of tension and relaxation at work, by means of which certain psychic states were metaphorically connected with certain musical scales originally called tense or lax by reason of their pitch, and by extension of the tension of the strings of a guitarra, the wish to be well tuned, to have the tension of one's psychic strings, as it were, tightened up to the proper devotional pitch. Thus, utilizes much more linguistic conventions that can be ascribed merely to the traditional metaphor of soul as instrument. Is in the history of the concept of tonus and temperament that the actual tightening of the string is involved. In the treatise Quod Dio Mutanda Tubulas, Philo makes an even more elaborate extended use of the notion. Quote, wonderful indeed is the soul of the sage, how he sets it like a lyre to a harmony, not with a scale of notes high or low, but with the knowledge of moral opposites and the practice of such of them as are better, how he does not strain it to excessive heights, nor yet relax it and weaken the concords of virtue and things naturally beautiful, but keeps it ever at an equal tension. Very good for the sage. We are reading
It's interesting that example of
Tuning of the Skies.
how tight the strings are.
It's about the tuning of the
Very tight,
soul.
I must to break